Why now, when Lamar makes this public? Why do you think he decided that this was the moment to go ahead and do this, with the NFL owners meeting taking place also in Arizona?
I think because of the NFL owners meeting taking place in Arizona, it's a perfect way to say, okay, here it is. I'm not going back, and I'm available. And someone please call, someone please contact. I think the whole nonsense about who represents him and all that stuff, don't talk to this guy. I think Lamar's made it very clear. And look, if you're going to be your own agent and you're going to control the narrative, you got to control the narrative. You can't stay in silence. I mean, it's not going to work. So I think that's why he did it. And it's the perfect timing and it's the perfect place to see what's going to move forward as this transpires. But now I see people writing about how he'd be a great fit for the Colts. And, we wrote about that last week and we talked about it last week. So, there's a lot to be played out here. I was flying here and reading online as I was flying, through the internet that, there's so many teams that make sense. I mean, how does Atlanta really not make sense? How does they not make sense? And so it's insane. I mean, look, you take a team like Houston. How does Houston not make sense? Well, you say, well, they got 2 number 1 picks. Here's one of the things that you have to understand in this franchise. If you don't go through the Ravens and make a deal, you can't. The Texans can't take their first round pick and trade it down. It has to be your first round pick. So they would have to give up 2. I think they have another pick somewhere in the middle of the first round. They have Cleveland's pick, obviously. But so, they would have to maneuver. But why wouldn't Houston be it? I mean, if you're, to turn around your fan base, wouldn't you be involved in this? Wouldn't that be something to kind of make it seem like, okay, we're serious? I mean, if you're D'Amico Ryans and you got a 6-year contract and, you've got a lot of say in the personnel department, wouldn't you rather have, again, the same thing that I would say to Chris Ballard, wouldn't you rather have Lamar than C.J. Stroud or the unknown?
I would personally, but those guys haven't asked me for my opinions. I actually have a list of teams that I wanted to ask you about, and we can go rapid fire on them. We'll do that in a little bit, but I wanted to play this cut from you first, though, from John Harbaugh, because Lamar tweeted this out right as John Harbaugh, the head coach of the Ravens, was sitting down to address reporters at the NFL owners meeting. Here's what Harbs had to say earlier today.
I haven't seen the tweet. It's an ongoing process. I'm following it very closely, just like everybody else is here, and looking forward to a resolution. I'm excited, thinking about Lamar all the time, thinking about him as our quarterback. We're building our offense around that idea, and I'm just looking forward to getting back to football. I'm confident that's going to happen.
Harbaugh also said he's confident Lamar will be their starter week 1. I don't know where the confidence is coming from. Ian Rappaport at the NFL Network talked about how the two sides have negotiated as recently as last week. So clearly they knew that this trade request was out there, since Lamar said he requested it on March 2nd, but they're still working through some things here. Can this be solved, or can it be salvaged, I should say, or is this the end of Lamar and the Ravens?
Well, I think something triggered the announcement, right? So with Rappaport's report saying that, they were talking last week that maybe they've reached an impasse in negotiations. And he finally just said, even though earlier he said he was March 2nd, he said he requested a trade, which all players do that are franchise. Look, I don't want to play on the tag. I want to trade. I want a contract. And then eventually money solves all problems. So you can't rule out that it couldn't be solved with money. I think you could say that John's speaking with confidence without evidence that he'll be the quarterback, because there's no evidence that suggests he's coming back. He doesn't want to come back. They don't seem to be willing to find a common ground within the negotiations. But I think the alternative is, what would the Ravens do? I know Huntley made the Pro Bowl, but we know that's kind of comical, right? We know that's a joke. So, they don't have a quarterback. And obviously, if they trade Lamar, they're going to have to get something where they could guarantee themselves a chance to get the quarterback. So for me, I think that it is ongoing, and money solves a lot of problems in a lot of situations. But I don't know, my question to John would be, well, didn't you design the offense before with Lamar in mind? Wasn't that Lamar's offense before? Why are we rebranding the offense? Why, which I think is probably a good thing. I've bitched about the Ravens offense for years now, about how it wasn't Lamar friendly in terms of the passing game or the outside zone. So I kind of wonder what that's all about.
Lamar, in his letter to the fans, which he tweeted out in about a series of 4 tweets, he said that the Ravens have not been interested in meeting his value. So the whole negotiating thing that's going on here, we've believed that it's all about a fully guaranteed deal, but there was also reports saying that he's not necessarily looking for a, quote, fully guaranteed deal. It's a lot that's out there with Lamar. But the one question I have for you is, what leverage does Lamar have, if any, as we sit here on March 27th?
Well, he has his ability to play, right? And so the leverage he has, he signs the contract. It's fully guaranteed. They can't maneuver the cap around, okay? And then what do they do? And what happens if he tweaks a hamstring, or what happens if he has a back injury? Because as we know from Big Puss in The Sopranos, nobody knows nothing about backs, right? So we could know nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so like, what happens then? I mean, we've already seen this guy, we thought he was coming back last year. John was fairly clear, remember the week he got hurt leading up to the next game, everybody, John was implying he was going to play. Now that may never been true, but there was an implication of that. So for me, my sense of it is if he's on that 1-year deal, it's not going to be beneficial for anybody. It's really not. And it's not going to be beneficial to the Ravens because they're going to give out $32 million and they're not going to get a $32 million player back. I think that's fair enough to say. So there's got to be some resolution, and that's his only leverage.
Our show sponsor, DraftKings, they, of course, put out a market that people can bet into of where will Lamar play next. And the favorite in that market is a team that you've already brought up. We've brought up over the course of this offseason, the Atlanta Falcons at plus 250. Right below them, our producer, Elliot Bowman, he smiles when he sees this. The Colts at 3-1. Commanders plus 450, Titans plus 750. You have the Jets, Seahawks, Patriots at 9-1, Dolphins, Buccaneers at 10-1. Is that a fair list there? Is that kind of how you would rank them? Or based on what you've been hearing, who are the rumored teams that might be interested in Lamar?
I got a text from somebody in the league today. He said, asking me if I thought the 49ers would go after him. And it did, to me, they don't have the cap room. They still have to sign Bosa. I don't know how that would all transpire. But to me, it's going to take a team with cap room or cap flexibility, let's say, and assets. It's going to take a team that has cap flexibility and assets. And I think ultimately that's where it starts. That's why I believe the Colts should be the favorite. Who was DraftKings favorite in this?
The Falcons.
Yeah. I mean, to me, here's what I don't understand. How the Falcons can be all in, almost catching their breath, believing they had Deshaun Watson, right? And willing to pay the freight for Deshaun. And now they're not interested in Lamar. Like, there's nothing that Desmond Ridder did this year that would say we don't need Lamar. Like, it makes no sense. And I do think that they are, if Baltimore had their way, they would probably want to trade him to Atlanta and get him to the NFC and get him out of having to deal with them and then go about their business, get a high pick from Atlanta. So I could see them. That's why I think DraftKings is smart to put Atlanta as the favorite. I do think Atlanta should come around to their senses. I mean, if you're Arthur Blank and you want to win, I mean, how do you tell your fans you don't want to win and you think you're going to go with Desmond Ridder because that's what your head coach thinks is the right thing to do? Like, I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. I don't know where Terry Fontenot is on this as a GM, but I know if I was Terry Fontenot, I've said this before. I said it on Lombardi Line. One of the things I learned a lot from Ernie Accorsi, the general manager, was at the Browns when I was with him. And he used to always say all the time, you got to protect the franchise. You have to protect the franchise. Terry Fontenot, if he doesn't get on an airplane and fly to Florida and spend time with Lamar and his mom, he's not protecting his franchise. He owes that to the franchise. He's got to do that. He can't just ignore that. He's got to be proactive and go after this. And it may come back saying, we're not in it. It's just ridiculous. But he's got to collect data, not with the end in mind, with an open mind, and come back and say, here's where we are. And then get up on a whiteboard and say, okay, if we sign Lamar, here's where we are. If we do this, here's where we are. And lay it out. And only have 3 or 4 people in the meeting because nobody really understands how to build a team anyway. But I think that's what you do if you want to protect the franchise.
And I think, like you said at the top of this pod, that this was Lamar telling teams, come get me. I'm open for business, just like how the Ravens said we're open for business when they placed the tag on him. So
I mean, that's what they said. That's what they said by tendering and what they tendered them. So there's no doubt.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.